Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. Blessing the band stage here at the Jazz Standard, his first in well over a decade, is legendary saxophonist, composer, as well as educator Joe Lovano. Now, what makes this whole week long of engagements very unique is that, one, Joe is introducing his brand new classic quartet. As you know, his current record, Classic Live at Newport, is his 20th and his final recording for the historic Blue Note Records. And as you know, throughout his 20-year career, his last quintet, which was the Us 5 Quintet, which featured the great Esperanza Spalding, as well as Otis Brown III and the great Francisco Mela, those guys really broke down doors sonically. Tonight, this brand new quartet is going to play, and you're going to hear comments from not only Joe, but members of the new quartet, as well as talk about his legendary run for Blue Note. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of the brand new Joe Lovano Classic Quartet, premiering live here on the Pace Report, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. What was that out there this evening?
Well, I could like to call it some cosmic universal music. And we explore in this quartet maybe 60-70% of my original compositions written for quartet, and the other 30-40% throughout any evening would be drawing from the inspired music of the masters.
You know, I'm listening, and I'm just sitting next to the pianist. He's got this whole McCoy Tyner and Keith Jarrett thing going. And then your drummer, he's got this Elvin Jones thing going. And then your bassist, Peter, he's all over the place too. I can't even pinpoint what he's trying to do. But what made you draw these three individuals together?
Well, we all have some history together and some relationships, and they're very inspired young players with a lot of roots in the music. Leo Genovese on piano. We met in the early 2000s. I have the Gary Burton Chair in Jazz Performance at Berklee College of Music, and 2001, that September, was my beginning of my tenure there. And Leo was in some of my first classes and ensembles and forum settings. And also Peter Slovov on bass, he was there also. So we played together in informal forum workshop settings, and we explored improvising and playing on famous music as well as originals that I would bring in, and just improvising in a very free manner. So we have relationships now, the three of us, for the last, I don't know, 16, 18 years, you know. But everyone in the group are disciples of the cats, man. You know, you mentioned McCoy and Keith and people that you heard in Leo's execution, you know. But he's originally from Argentina and knows so much music, man. All kinds of folk music and beautiful music from South America and around the world, you know. He's a really inspired young man, I will say that. And Peter also, you know, I mean, he's coming from Jimmy Garrison and Ron Carter and Mingus, and he knows a lot of music as well, you know, and has really experienced playing the music, not just listening to it, you know. Lame Estrefe, my drummer, he's from Kosovo. And he's a disciple of Ed Blackwell and Idris Muhammad.
Yes.
He met Idris early 2000s, and Idris has been one of his main inspirations, not only as a player, but as a human, you know, as a human being on this planet, you know. Idris Muhammad, who I spent quite a few years with in my trio with Cameron Brown on bass, was one of the most inspired souls of all in the history of music, and is part of the fabric of American music. So Lami's coming from some deep places, digging Idris alone, but of course Elvin looms large for all of us. I first played with Elvin in 1975, and I sat in with him in Cleveland. Steve Grossman was playing with him.
Jesus.
And then through the years, played a number of times, subbing for Pat LaBarbera and Sonny Fortune and others in the 80s. In 87, I toured in the Jazz Machine for a 9-week European tour. And in 97, Elvin played on my trio record, Trio Fascination, with Dave Holland. So I had like an amazing experience playing with Elvin Jones, and then joining the Thad Jones Mel Lewis band around 1980. I had a chance to learn about playing music from playing Thad Jones's music with Mel Lewis. That was incredible. I was on that band at the Vanguard and touring around the world from 1980 to 91. And Thad moved to Copenhagen in 1980. So when I really joined, Bob Brookmeyer was there and writing new music, you know. And then in more recent years, playing with the great Hank Jones, who was 82 when I started playing with him, around 2002 and 3. And we did 4 records together. And the last one that came out is live at Newport with George Mraz and Louis Nash. And I call it classic because playing with Hank Jones was like one of the most deepest moments for me developing in this music. Of course, he played with Charlie Parker and Ella Fitzgerald. And
Marilyn Monroe.
he played with Marilyn Monroe on that famous Happy Birthday, which no one really knows. He was on at the time, he was on the CBS orchestra at every Ed Sullivan show. He was the house pianist. And
Isn't it
but
amazing?
mainly, the biggest inspiration, and Hank also spoke about it a lot, was that he took Thelonious Monk's place with Coleman Hawkins, 1944. And right around the time he came to New York with Lucky Thompson and some folks. So for me to have developed through the years, listening to Hank on some famous records, never dreaming I would have a chance to play with him. And in his 80s, we played and toured quite a lot. You know, he came to Europe with me a bunch of times, and I played on his 90th birthday celebration at the Hollywood Bowl and at Birdland here in New York. And we played here together too in the Jazz Standard for a ceremony where there was some awards event that went down, and we might have gotten an award for my recording I'm All For You, and they were also honoring Hank. Gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award. So we played some duets here at one of those incredible, crazy parties for the Jazz Journalists Association.
The Jones guys, the Jones brothers. It's really ironic that those three brothers brought a very different element as well as a presence to the idiom of jazz music, and all of them had different personalities.
They all did, but they all had a real similarity too in their mannerisms. And you would hear Elvin making sounds when he would be playing in his spaces between his accents. He would make these little groans and grunts, And Hank did exactly the same thing. You would hear Hank between his punctuation make sounds, and yeah, those cats were amazing, man, and they inspired each other. But I think Hank really led the way. When he was 25 playing with Charlie Parker and folks here in New York, Elvin was 14.
You know,
and you know what 14-year-olds are like.
yeah.
My man was like all over town, and Thad, I think, might have been 18 or something. They grew up knowing Hank and knowing the things he was doing. And I remember hearing an interview with Thad, and they were saying, wow, your voicings, oh, where do you get all your ideas? They were quizzing him, and he said, oh, I just listen to my brother. That's what he said.
Joe, I want to talk to you about Cleveland. I want to talk about your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad was very instrumental, being that he was a jazz musician and a very professional musician around Cleveland. What was the first jazz concert that he took you to see?
Well, when I was in high school, there was quite a few moments, some afternoon matinees that I remember going to with Sonny Stitt and James Moody and Dizzy Gillespie. And one time he took me to hear Gene Ammons around 1970, 71. And it was amazing. That one was really amazing because my dad went into the kitchen, which was the dressing room area, on their intermission, and I went and followed, and I saw him and Jug embrace, and it turned me around, because all of a sudden Gene Ammons wasn't this amazing sound and player on these records. He was like there, and in reality, him and my dad embraced, and it was like, wow. My dad had played a jam session or something in the 50s or whenever. Cleveland was a hotbed for a lot of music. Tad Dameron was from Cleveland, who would have been 100 this year also. And my dad played with Tad and tried to teach me how to play some of his music, and some of those tunes taught me how to play the saxophone and taught me about the music, sounds and phrases and feelings, and yeah, like that,
You hit on a very important saxophonist in my psyche. My grandfather was a very big Gene Ammons fan, and one of the things I can vividly remember my grandfather doing, listening to a lot of his music, was if he wasn't smoking, whooping my behind in checkers, he loved his blues and he loved his ballads. And you automatically knew who that person was when he blew. When he just hit the mic, you knew it was Gene Ammons.
Oh yeah, well, he had such a deep, incredible, soulful feeling, and his sound was all about his approach and love. You felt the love in every note he played, and to be in a room with him that one time was incredible, man. It really changed the way I tried to practice and tried to hear myself, and to fill the room. And on that particular moment, Amina Claudine Myers was playing organ also.
Wow.
Which we were on the Charlie Hayden Liberation Music Orchestra together in the 80s. And I heard her one day talking about Gene Ammons, and I quizzed her. I said, were you playing organ in your stocking feet in Cleveland? Like 1970, 71. And she says, oh, yeah, that was me. And that was a beautiful moment because I just remembered her, but I didn't remember her name at that time. I was a kid, I was like so fixed on Jug,
Peter, tell me the first time you worked with Joe Lovano.
The first gig I played with Joe was in 2010. I played with his Us 5 band in Barbados. That was my first gig with Joe, and I've been playing in different bands of his ever since.
What is the thing that you bring to the new classic quartet, and what is it that you're learning from with these new type of music and music styles that you guys are bringing to the fold?
Every minute is a learning opportunity with Joe. I mean, he's got so much to give that it's so easy to learn from him. I think what he's looking for in me, in the bass player, is this sort of elasticity where like I can play straight ahead, but also I can follow him when we play, like avant-garde stuff or any he's looking for versatility. At the same time, he's looking for things that I'm familiar with, like more standard things, more from the Coltrane bag, and whatever it is, so far it's been working great. So yeah, But as I said, like every gig is a learning experience with Joe.
You are part of the new classic quartet.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about playing with Joe, and what are you doing as far as a drummer, bringing your skills to his new sound?
Playing with Joe, that's a beautiful question. It's like a blessing, man. It's a special, it's very spiritual. Same like, when we listen to our heroes. So Joe was one of my heroes to play with. And now here we are.
The classic quartet, you guys are swinging some new stuff and also the classic.
Totally.
Why do you think it's called classic?
Why? Because it's classic. Once you see us, you will say, no, it's classic. It's because it's that was Joe's previous quartet that came out, from Newport with Hank Mobley, Hank Jones, I'm sorry, and Louis Nash and George Mraz. they play some classic songs of Joe's, man. And we do the same, you know. And we got a lot of new materials. So there's plenty of stuff to work on.
This is the end of a very important legacy with you at Blue Note Records. And this last recording marks the ending. This is the last recording with the label.
Well, I had a 3 consecutive contract deal from around 1991 or 2 or something, you know. Each contract was about for 8 records or so. And I did some in between also, some special project recordings. So this marks my final one, and I think it might be 26 or 7 that I did. And man, it was the most amazing period in my recording life, you know, and having the trust and confidence that Bruce Lundvall gave me all those years to do all these different projects. They all happened because I was presenting the music. I wasn't just doing a record date. I was playing music that I was living with the players I'm living with and playing with all the time. And Bruce saw that, and he really supported me, and it's been amazing. And then Don Was came on the scene, my recording Cross Culture with Us Five and Lionel Loecki as a guest. That came out right when Don first came on the scene, and my band Sound Prince with Dave Douglas, live in Monterey came, and then this classic live at Newport with Hank Jones, which is something I recorded and had in the can, and Bruce loved, but it couldn't come out in between stuff. So I presented it to Don, and that ended up being my final recording on Blue Note at this moment, but you never know what happens in the future, you know.
Let's talk about Berkeley. And you know, you're now in the great lineage of great band leaders and composers who are now passing it on to the next generation. Explain to the viewers what your role is, and what is it that you're doing differently as an instructor versus being a musician?
Well, it's all one, really. And the thing about it for me is that it's such an amazing blessing to live in the world of music and to share the blessings. So that's how I look at it. I don't look at it so much like teacher student. We're just sharing the blessings. We have, like, everybody has different experiences and insights, and you gain wisdom as you develop and grow, and you're always studying the elements and the fundamentals. And it's for me, it's just about sharing that with folks. And the opportunity to have the Gary Burton Chair in Jazz Performance at Berkeley, and to teach within the Global Jazz Institute with Danilo Perez and John Patitucci and Terry Lynn Carrington and George Garzone and David Gilmore and a host of other amazing folks that participate, and we all play together and do these things that are really special and fantastic. And I'm also doing things here in New York at NYU as well, like hosting a forum class and rehearsing an ensemble, compositionally, having folks bring in their original pieces, and then we work them out and try to put things together, you know. So it's beautiful, man.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live from the famous Jazz Standard here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank the incomparable Joe Lovano for his time. Also, I'd like to congratulate him on his brand new classic quartet. I also like to thank the guys in the band for their comments, as well as reflections of Mr. Lovano. For more information on his upcoming club dates, as well as to order his latest CD, his last with Blue Note, please visit him online at joelovano.com. I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at the Jazz Standard for what they do. The food is always great and the hospitality is always great. If you're ever in New York City, please support the Jazz Standard. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.
Thank you.